YouTube world, Mac Daddy 1911A1 here with the Shade Tree Survivalist. Today we're going to talk about the 1x8 by 24 Gen 3 primary arm scope with the ACSS Reticle. ACSS meaning Advanced Combat Sighting System. And here's the layout of it. This is not exact to scale, so please excuse my pitiful art, but I've been trying to do this, and anywho, this is a auto ranging setup, so you can range. That's the number one cause for misses, other than jerking around, whatever the case may be, jerking the trigger. A well-placed shot that misses generally is due to misestimation of the range to a target. This particular scope, the 1x8 by 24, second focal plane, Generation 3 primary arm scope, has this particular ACSS reticle, and it's easy to use once you figure out or read the directions. Number one, you have to have it set at 8 power for this to work. Number two, against a dark target, you definitely want your illumination on so you can see it. Against a black target, it'll disappear, I promise you. The next thing is you have to zero this at 100 yards, and the shots need to land an inch high above your aiming point in order to make the calculations, the calibrations correct. Once you've done all that, you go out to shoot, 8 power, have your illumination on. Here's how this works. Here's your horseshoe, okay? Your target's shoulders are coming across the very center above the chevron. From here to here, that would be the width at 200 yards. The width of the bottom of the chevron, if the shoulders are that wide, no, not the chevron, the horseshoe here, at the bottom of the horseshoe, if it's that wide, it's 300 yards. If it's as wide as this top line, which is not actually is correct, it's set down a little bit further on the actual reticle, but I was in a hurry when I did this. That would be 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and you'll notice they get narrower, 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 and narrower, just like your target gets smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller the further out they are. So that's how you measure. If the shoulder width is equal to whichever line, that's their range. And if it's somewhere in between, you would do a hold off somewhere in between, and that would put it dead on the money, and you would make a hit. These lines here, or dots here, are your 5 mile per hour wind hold-offs. So if your target's steady straight on at you or stationary, and you get your range correct, the next thing is you need to estimate if there's any crosswind left or right. So that's a couple of the features. This dot and this dot are your hold-offs for a soldier running flat out. That's going to average about 8.6 miles per hour. So if they're running to the right, you would hold this dot on them, okay? And then if you fire it and you're smooth in your traverse, they'll run right into the shot, because you're aiming here, your shot's going off here, and they're running this way, they'll run right into it by the time it gets there. Vice versa. If they're running this way, you'll hold this on to them, and like I said, transition smoothly, and they'll run right into the shot. That's how it works. You're firing ahead of the target. Okay? Now, if you're the one moving and they're the one stationary, you have to aim behind them for something of this nature. Now, trying to do this, of course, running is not going to cut it, but say in a vehicle, whatever the case may be, a helicopter, you have to aim behind them if they're stationary and you're moving. Just think about that. Okay, on this side of the scale, it says, okay, say you cannot see their shoulders because they're walking across in front of you instead of front to back, or at an angle, so you can't get a true reading on them. But you can see their feet all the way to the top of their head. Okay, the little blue man here, I drew her an example. This little tiny guy down here, he's at 800 yards. The big guy here, he's at 400 yards. And that's all you have to do. You place their feet on the bottom, and wherever their head lands in the corresponding lines, that's their range. And then you would hold off at that appropriate range. Like here, it would be 400, you would hold off right here. At 800, you would put this portion of the scope dead on. And of course, you'd still have to take into account for the wind. But anywho, I'm going to give a live demonstration of this. It's not the best because I wasn't behind the rifle. I was in front of the rifle. Completely, totally unloaded, no magazine, bolt lock to the rear, blah, blah, blah. It's just me doing it by myself, so it's not a great representation, but you get the idea. If the rifle had been moved over so this portion or this portion had been lined up on me, you can see how accurate it would be able to measure the distance, and then I'll tell you the distance. So y'all stay tuned for the rest of the video and see a live demonstration of how this works. We ain't had no other luck. We're going to try it here. Go straight to that big dang pine tree over there. It's probably roughly around 300 yards. Alright, got illumination on, but we only got 51% of battery, so there ain't no damn telling if it'll stay or not. 8 magnification, illumination's on. Let's try it. Alright, ladies and gentlemen. This is the view you'll have when you are looking through the 1x8 primary arms Gen 3 scope with the ACSS reticle. This particular reticle is good for 5.56, 5.45, 6.5 Grendel, and 308 or 7.62 times 51 millimeter. It'll be a moment or two. I've got to go under or over the fence and look at there. One of the cows wants to be on camera, and what she's looking at is me as I walk across the field, and I've got to be out, I don't know, 60, 70 yards before the scope will even see me. But here's the deal. In order for the ACSS reticle to work, it has to be set at 8 magnification. If there's a dark background, such as a dark blue or dark black jacket or shirt or uniform, the reticle, even on the brightest day, the reticle just will not show up against it. If it's shiny black, it will. If it's flat black, it will not. So that's something for you guys to take into account. So you need to make sure your illumination is on. This is set at 11 power on the illumination, and you can see where I had the rifle. It's tilted a little left, and I don't have anyone behind the rifle to get an accurate read. I have no idea why I just set off walking without counting my paces, but on the way back, once I reach that tree and I'm on my way back, I'll start counting it off. And was thinking I needed to go a little to my right, to the left, and I did not. I was actually dead on that damn money. I thought I had turned the reticle to where it was dead on the money at the tree for this to work. Okay, let's get down to it. Ranging. 200 yards. My shoulders, because my shoulders are 18 inches wide, just a touch over 18, but just barely over 18. You see the center horseshoe at the center of the reticle between the two black dots. That reticle, or that horseshoe, at the center of it, right even with the top of the chevron, the little inverted arrow, or the arrowhead there in the center, my shoulder should reach side to side across that, but not go beyond it at 200 yards. At 300 yards, the opening at the bottom of the horseshoe, that open gap there, my shoulder should reach side to side there. The next line down below that is the 400 yard mark. The width of my shoulder should be even with that line at 400, and on and on and on down to 800 at the very bottom. You'll notice they gradually get narrower and narrower. Well, you get smaller and smaller the further the distance.
But in order for the scale to be accurate, it has to be at max 8 power, already zeroed at 100 yards to be 1 inch high at 100 yards in order for it to be properly calibrated to your cartridge and your rifle combination. But you can see, once I get to that tree, I walked it off coming back, and it is 319 yards on the money, because that tree is inside the fence line. I'm just about there. Now, if I'd had someone behind the scope and could see that tiny little screen on the GoPro I'm using to video this, it would have been great to be able to place that scale, the bottom of the horseshoe, the opening at the bottom of the horseshoe, on my shoulders. You can look and eyeball it right there, and it's exact. It's on the money. So the scale is correct, and that's what you do. You place that reticle on them, and whichever line in that vertical one matches the width of their shoulders, which is 18 inches, your calibrated width, to whichever line on the horizontal center scale, that will give you your distance. If for some reason they're walking left to right, you cannot see their shoulders, but you can see them from the bottom of their feet to the top of their head. Then the scale to the right hand side, the smaller scale, you place their feet on the bottom line, and wherever their head lands, that is corresponding to the distance away that they are from you, and that is from 800 to 400 yards. Again, the 300 yard would be at the width of the scale, or the opening at the bottom of the horseshoe, and the width of the center, the very center from side to side of the horseshoe would be 200, and then if anything below that, just center, put the chevron on the center of their mass and pop a hole in them. Now here in a moment I'm going to stop, and I'll be at 100 yards from the tree, and once I am there I will raise my arm, and when I do, that will be 219 yards from the scope and the rifle. And I'm doing this by myself. Rifle is completely, totally empty. Double, triple check. I do not want to hurt. Okay, that will be the 200 yard mark from the scope, and you can see that my shoulder width would be the width at the center of the horseshoe. Just eyeballing it there, you can see that. Now you can see I'm turned at an angle, and I'm doing that to show you measure using the right hand scale from the bottom of my feet to the top of my head, and that will give you your range. Okay, the black dots either side of the chevron, that is the lead that you would need for someone running flat out with a load of combat gear, web gear, vest, combat vest with magazines, rifle, and so forth. That's 8.6 miles per hour. And if they were moving from left to right across the right hand to the right side of the scope, you would lead with the left dot, and they'd run right into the damn bullet. Vice versa, if they're moving from the right hand side of the scope toward the left, you would hold that dot that's on the right on the target, and they would run right into the shot, which would be around the chevron. But you have to be smooth with your follow through as the rifle moves across. So there's two different ways, if it is properly set up, as far as being zeroed at 100 yards, landing 1 inch high, and it is on 8 power. That is what it is calibrated to be used. Okay, and that's the 100 yard mark. 200 from the tree, so it's actually 119 yards from the scope out to that point in time. Now, being I'm standing square with it, you would just use the width of my shoulders, which in this particular case will be wider than the chevron, so I'm below 200, or not wider than the chevron, wider than the horseshoe, and you can see I'm quite a bit wider than it, so it'd be under 100 yards. You just put the chevron center mass, drop the hammer, you're going to hit, and it's going to be precise hit. But yeah, wonderful, wonderful scope setup. Okay, depending on the device you're viewing this through, you also have leads for wind, and that looks like a Christmas tree as it spreads out from narrow at the top and gets wider and wider at 800 yards. But as for a 5-mile-per-hour wind, you would double that and basically hold at 800 yards about where your lead would be for somebody running flat out at 8.6 miles per hour. That would be your hold. Very difficult to do this video by myself. This is the 10th or 12th time I've tried it, and one thing or another has happened, and I just could not get the shot that I wanted. I'd really prefer somebody was behind the rifle and able to hold the scale on me as I'm advancing back and forth, but to see it through the camera, you cannot disturb the camera or you will not get this crystal clear circle. Okay, it'll be fuzzy on one side or the other, just not a good shot at all. Took a lot of damn effort to get this as good as it is. Maybe one day I can do it again, but the whole point is to be able to range on a enemy combatant, to find out what their range is, get the appropriate hold, give your hold off for wind as well as for someone who's on the move running their butt off. But anywho, this is Mike Daddy 1911A1. Thank you very much for watching. Y'all take care. And y'all check it out. We'll have more videos coming in the future.
I don't know how much I got. It's 319 yards from that darn big pine tree to the camera.